Hey everybody, I got a fun one for you today. Somebody had suggested re-examining Gordon Lightfoot's Canadian Railroad Trilogy. Apparently, this is like a documentary, like a almost 20-minute long documentary of some Canadian history with the railroad, and how Gordon Lightfoot kind of intertwined with all that. And I'm just super excited because I've done a few Gordon Lightfoot songs, and I think he's amazing. If you guys want to check those out, I'll have them linked up at the end of this video if you haven't seen my reaction. God, I forget what they were called. Hold on. I know what they were called. Hold on. Gordon Lightfoot. What have I done? Okay. I did the Canadian Railroad Trilogy that he wrote in 3 days. It was kind of a song, I think. And then the Wreck of the Edmund Fitzgerald I did. And Sundown, Gordon's Hot 100 hit. His Hot 100 hit, you guys. Hope you've seen that one. I'm sure most of you probably have. I don't see how you couldn't have. Could have not. But anyways, you guys, I'm excited to check this one out. I like documentaries, honestly. So hopefully you stick with me through this one. And I probably won't pause it too many times. Just a few probably if I have something I want to say. But all right, let's get into it, guys. Like, comment, subscribe if you enjoy this kind of stuff and just want to help my channel out there.
That we tell ourselves as a nation matter. They help people find a sense of identity, a sense of purpose, and they help people find common ground on which to unite and push for a better world. In Canada, these national myths are especially important. They act as a bulwark, preventing us from being devoured entirely by the cultural weight of our southern neighbor. And one of Canada's great national myths is that of the railroad. While Canada confederated in 1867, there are many that'll tell you the nation wasn't truly united until November 7th, 1885, when Canadian Pacific Railway Director Donald Smith drove the last spike of the rail into the ground at Craigellachie, British Columbia. For me, the railroad has always been essential to understanding what it means to be Canadian. I grew up in an old rail town, and I spent much of my childhood on long drives up Highway 17, counting train cars as they passed. Even as I'm writing this video, I'm sitting in Vancouver, a city that likely would have become part of the United States were it not for the railway. With all of this in mind, it's perhaps unsurprising that Gordon Lightfoot turned to the railway when the CBC commissioned a song from him for Canada's centennial celebrations. Lightfoot penned
That's the song I reacted to.
Trilogy in 3 days, drawing inspiration from the Civil War Trilogy, a piece by his friend and mentor Bob Gibson. The song debuted on January 1st, 1967, and was immediately celebrated as a masterwork of national myth-making. There are even some who call it Canada's second national anthem. The Railroad Trilogy has helped many Canadians, including myself, understand a great triumph of our country's history. But in this video, I'm going to use the song to help us understand something else about Canada. Because while I love Canada, and I think this country has done great things, I also think that we are a nation with skeletons in our closet. And if we're going to move forward and achieve real reconciliation as a nation, we need to dig up those skeletons and have frank, uncomfortable conversations about the way this country was built.
Okay. This is interesting.
The Canadian Railroad Trilogy was partially inspired by the Civil War Trilogy, a song by American folk singers Gibson and Camp. Like Lightfoot's song, Gibson and Camp's piece details a complicated part of their country's history that's essential to its national DNA. But where Gibson and Camp framed their song around the fiery tragedy of battle, Gordon Lightfoot opens on the tranquil beauty of Canadian nature.
There was a time in this fair land when the railroad did not run, when the wild majestic mountains stood alone against the sun.
Lightfoot paints a stirring picture of our beautiful country, one that will resonate with anyone who has been lucky enough to travel across it. From the Rocky Mountains to the Great Lakes, from the Mackenzie River to the cliffs of Cavendish, Canada has always been defined by our nature. Lightfoot's depiction of Canada's pre-colonial nature is beautiful, but Canada was more than just nature. It's impossible to know what Canada's population was on the eve of contact, but Canada's Royal Commission on Aboriginal Health puts that number at 500,000 people. Among that population were thriving nations and peoples, each with their own cultures, their own stories, and their own unique connections to the land that we call Canada. But with the arrival of European settlers, all of their lives changed drastically. As Lightfoot sings, the settlers of Canada began to shape the land in their own image.
As to this verdant country they came from all around. They sailed upon her waterways and they walked the forest tall. Built the mines, the mills, and the factories for the good of us all.
While I'm certain that many of the early industrialists in Canada believed they were doing their work for the good of us all, I also know they had narrow definitions of who counted as us.
Yeah.
Much of the growth and development of Canada necessarily came at the expense of the Indigenous populations already here. This is especially true when it comes to the railroad. At the end of the Railroad Trilogy's first section, Lightfoot celebrates the vision and entrepreneurial spirit of Canada's early nation building.
For they looked in the future and what did they see? They saw an iron road running from the sea to the sea. Bringing the...
As the song depicts the building of the railroad, the tempo picks up, imitating a steam train and conjuring images of the industrial noise that tore across the country.
Bring in the workers and bring up the rails. We gotta lay down the tracks and tear up the trails.
The construction of the railroad will be forever tied to John A. Macdonald. Canada's first Prime Minister had a bold and ambitious vision for the country, and that vision relied on a railroad to unite it. The daunting landscape of Canada was one of the biggest obstacles that the railroad dreams faced, but Canada's first peoples were another. Speaking with the National Observer, Dr. James Daschuk said that to make the railroad happen, Macdonald not only subjugated First Nations people, he stomped on them. Canada Pacific and the Canadian government drove Indigenous peoples off their land and expropriated it for the railway. When Cree communities were ravaged with famine...
It honestly kind of just sounds like America. I mean, that's what we did, you know, when Christopher Columbus and everybody landed. I mean, there was already native people here. Like, and look what we've done to our native populations here, you know. All the battles they fought and everything. It's kind of despicable, really. And just look at today. Look at today. And here we are. People think that, you know, we're not all foreign, you know. I'm foreign just because I was born here. I mean, my ancestors weren't born, you know, here. You know, I'm from like probably over in the European area somewhere. So, I don't know. This all kind of rubs me the wrong way because of how they went about it and all the bloodshed for land. And the problem is it's happening today in the 21st century right now. I mean, there's wars going on right now because people just want more land. They're greedy. It's corporation, it's greed, egos. It's terrible to watch, to be honest. It's kind of depressing. It's one reason I really don't like living in America, to be honest. You'd think it'd all be great and grand, but honestly, there's really nothing great and grand about it right now, in my mind. So, I did get my passport this last year. Never thought I'd have to do that unless, you know, I was planning on taking a beautiful vacation somewhere, but I got it because in case I need to flee the country, maybe seek asylum somewhere or just get tired of it and I need to move. I just got to be ready, you know? So I don't know. Kind of funny how that works, right? Before we were the country that a lot of people wanted to move to and be at. And now I wouldn't recommend it to a single soul. I'd say stay the hell as far away as you can from America right now. Why would anybody ever want to come here right now is my question. With what's going on. I wouldn't. I want to get out, to be honest, and I'm not even like the type that has to really worry too much about what's going on. But everybody should be frightened what's going on, no matter who you are. It's not fun. Not fun here right now. So, hoping by this time next year there might be some good news, once November hits. But anyways, I'm not trying to get political on this channel. I'm trying not to blab too much, you guys. I just speak my mind sometimes, and next thing I know, I've been speaking for 2-3 minutes, and that makes these videos much longer, and I apologize. But I know you guys all understand and still love me anyways. But very interesting to learn about this kind of history. I guess I didn't even think about Native Americans being in Canada as well. And that's just my shallow-mindedness right there. Yeah, shame on us. Shame on the people who took people's land from them. I feel like the railroad was very good and had bad. Like with everything, there's good with it, but there's also the bad with it. And I will say Canada is a very beautiful country. I have been there. I've been on many fishing trips up there when I was growing up. I haven't been there for a while. I do have relatives in the Upper Peninsula of Michigan, about 45 minutes or so from the border of Canada. Like Sault Ste. Marie area is where we would cross into, I think it was Quebec. And we drive up. Once we get to Canada, it's about a 3-hour drive up. And man, what a beautiful drive, you guys. And yes, we passed many railroads. There was trains that always drove by our big lake that we would fish on. I'd wave, I don't know. I know trains were a huge part. There was old gold mine shafts that we could like go walk to and look around like gold mines and find little pieces of like, it probably wasn't real gold, or if it was just tiny little flakes, Just a very cool part of the world. I loved it up there. It's beautiful seeing the wildlife, the moose. I love Canada, to be honest. Like I would definitely move there, but it's just not easy to pick up and move to a whole new country. It's honestly like a very long, tedious process. It's not easy. So anyways, let's keep going. Unless I marry. Maybe if I marry, is it the same in America? Like if you marry somebody there, could you just become a citizen then? I don't know how that works, but maybe I'll have to go marry some Canadian woman So, Canadian woman, what's up? No, anyways, let's keep going.
And expropriated it for the railway. When Cree communities were ravaged with famine and tuberculosis, the government denied them aid that it had promised in treaty negotiations allowing for the rail.
That's bullshit.
In the final years of the railway's construction, Canada implemented the pass system, a system of racial segregation that denied Indigenous peoples freedom of movement outside of their reservation. And this policy outlived John A. Macdonald. Wow. It was enforced until the 1930s, or possibly even the 40s in some places. The railroad was a feat in engineering, and it did shape the country as we know it today, but from a humanitarian perspective, it was a tragedy and a crime. In his song, Gordon Lightfoot depicts the railroad as giving lifeblood to a growing nation.
Open your heart, let the lifeblood flow. Gotta get on our way, 'cause we're moving too slow.
The railroad did give lifeblood to Canada, and it still does to this day. But much of that comes at the expense of the real blood of Indigenous communities. Blood spilled through violence, hate, and systemic subjugation. And this system of racial violence was not saved merely for those in the way of the railroad. It also affected the poor men who toiled to build the railroad itself.
Yeah, you probably didn't get paid much doing that.
A lot of history books will say that the railroad was built by men in power, like Sir John A. Macdonald or Donald Alexander Smith. And while these men did contribute to the construction of the railroad, they didn't actually build it. The Canadian Pacific Railway was built through the hard labor of tens of thousands of workers. And it's these workers that Gordon Lightfoot centers in the second movement of his trilogy. After the driving speed of industrialism, the song slows to a country ballad, washed in soothing slide guitars. Once again, the beauty of Canada's nature is highlighted in Lightfoot's lyrics.
Behind the blue Rockies, the sun is declining. The stars, they come stealing at the close of the day.
Amidst the serene wilderness, Lightfoot focuses on the navvies who built the railway.
We are the navvies who work upon the railway, swinging our hammers in the bright blazing sun.
Backbreaking work.
Navvy was shortened from navigators, a British term used for canal builders in the 18th century. With the advent of locomotive technology, navvies became key to the development of rails in the UK, the US, and, of course, Canada. Building railroads was hard, dangerous, and often thankless labor. As the railroad stretched across the prairies and into the Rocky Mountains, the work became harder and more dangerous. It became clear that it would be impossible to finish off the railroad without bringing on more laborers. And that's where another black mark on Canada's history began. To facilitate the completion of the project, contractor Andrew Onderdonk began to bring in laborers from China. These laborers were paid significantly less than their white counterparts and were expected to cover the costs of their own food and equipment. By the time the railroad was finished, more than 15,000 Chinese workers had been brought in to help with construction. The much celebrated feat of bringing the rail...
So were they just like forced to come over to Canada to help with this? Or did they have a choice? Like, hey, do you want to go over to Canada? Like, did they have any choice in the matter here? Or were they just forced over to Canada, I guess? I don't know. Were they so they were basically like slaves? Like, did some people buy them from China to bring them over? I don't know. Somebody let me know in the comments. That's crazy, though. I had no idea about this. I had no idea more than 15,000 Chinese. Wow. Yeah, I mean, every country has skeletons, guys. Every country. Doesn't matter who you are. America, we have plenty. Plenty. Obviously, Canada has some. You could look at every country. They're going to have some skeletons in their closet. So, it's unfortunate. But it's important to teach the history because it shouldn't repeat. But it is. Oh my God, I can't. I gotta keep going. Gotta keep going. All right, let's go.
Had been brought in to help with construction. The much celebrated feat of bringing the railroads through the Rocky Mountains simply would not have
crazy.
happened without Chinese laborers. In the second movement of the Railroad Trilogy, Lightfoot has a possible reference to these workers, dreaming of their families back home.
Across the wide prairie, our loved ones lie sleeping. Beyond the dark oceans, in a place far away.
If conditions were hard for the white navvies, they were nightmarish for the Chinese laborers, who were assigned to the most difficult and dangerous jobs. This often meant the use of explosives. In Pierre Berton's The Great Railway, he recounts a story of a Chinese laborer whose head was blown off by a piece of rock because the white foreman refused to give warning of the impending explosion. On top of the inhumane labor conditions, Chinese workers faced constant discrimination and were even denied medical care. Scurvy ran rampant through Chinese work camps, and historians estimate that at least 600 Chinese workers died during the construction.
Wow.
That's more than 4 men killed for every mile of track. After a slow middle section, the Railroad Trilogy once again picks up steam, building speed until it reaches a remembrance of all those who lost their lives building the railroad.
$1 a day and a place for my head, a drink to the living, a toast to the dead.
The myth that we tell of the railroad is that it united Canada and allowed it to flourish as a country. But many of the Chinese laborers who were essential to its completion didn't get to reap those benefits. White Canada was afraid of letting Chinese people immigrate into the country. In order to deny Chinese workers the fruits of their labor, the Canadian government implemented the Chinese Immigration Act of 1885 once the railroad was completed. This legislation created what we now know as the Chinese head tax. Anyone who wished to immigrate to Canada from China would need to pay at least $50 upon entering the country. And that number only increased over
And that's a lot of money back then.
While this was implemented by Macdonald's government, it wasn't unique to him. In 1903, it was Wilfrid Laurier's Liberal Party who raised the head tax to $500. That was the equivalent of 2 years' work for the average Chinese laborer at the time. The Chinese communities that were able to establish themselves in Canada were met with constant discrimination and hatred. A 1902 Royal Commission on Immigration stated that Chinese immigrants were obnoxious to a free community and dangerous to the state. The sentiment among many white Canadians was perhaps most plainly described by Reverend Leslie Clay. Reporting to the commission, Clay said, "Canada would be strengthened by the exclusion of the Chinese race." This sentiment manifested in ugly ways. In 1907, a mob of 7,000 white men wearing ribbons that read, "For a White Canada," marched into Vancouver's Chinatown and wreaked havoc, smashing windows and destroying businesses. In 1923, Canada banned Chinese immigrants outright, a ban that would last until 1947. If the railroad helped to shape Canada as it is today, so too did the discriminatory policies against those who built it. While we might be tempted to pretend that it's not, Canada's legacy of racism is as much a part of our country as the legacy of the railroad itself. So, where does this legacy leave us? The third act of Gordon Lightfoot's Railroad Trilogy is triumphant and optimistic, portraying a Canada that has conquered the land and united its people.
Oh, the song of the future has been sung. Oh, the battles have been won. On the mountain tops we stand. Oh, the world at our command.
And honestly, I still believe that there is triumph to be found in the railroad, and in the Canada that it helped build. For me, the Canadian Railroad Trilogy is a celebration of the Canada that I thought I knew growing up. That Canada saved my family's lives. When the Soviet Union was forcibly deporting tens of thousands of Estonians to die in gulags, that Canada welcomed my grandparents in, allowed them to escape persecution, and thrive. And I think that's a story that will resonate with a lot of Canadians, because I truly believe Canada has been, and in a lot of ways continues to be, a force for good in the world. But Canada has also done untold harm, much of which continues to this very day. Just as the Soviets occupied my ancestral homeland, my Canadian ancestors occupied the traditional lands of countless Indigenous communities. We didn't have gulags, but we did have residential schools. And while Canada might have opened its borders for my ancestors to immigrate, it denied those exact same rights to thousands of would-be Chinese Canadians. I think that, as a country, we're at a crossroad. The creation of the railroad and the subsequent myth-making around it have allowed Canada to become a diverse, thriving country and have allowed us to find our own identity separate from the United States. But those same myths have paved over the atrocious crimes of the past. I want to be proud of my country, but in order to do so, I need to reckon with its history. All of us need to reckon with our history. And that means reframing our national myths and acknowledging the sins of our past.
Yep.
And even more importantly, it means listening to the communities harmed by the creation of this thing that we call Canada. It means understanding the struggles that they faced historically and the struggles that they still face today. We can't change our country's past, but we can't ignore it either. We need to learn from it, and we need to make amends if we ever want to turn our country into something as spectacular as Gordon Lightfoot makes it seem. The final verse of the Canadian Railroad Trilogy returns to where the song began.
For there was a time in this fair land when the railroad did not run, when the wild, majestic mountains stood alone against the sun. Long before the white man and long before the wheel, when the green, dark forest was too silent.
It's a reminder of our past as a country, and at least to me, a reminder of what was stolen from those who lived here first. And I think that the final line of Gordon Lightfoot's song can serve as a kind of eulogy, remembering all those thousands who have been hurt, discriminated against, and killed in our country's complicated history.
And many are the dead men too silent to be real.
Wow. That's an amazing story, to be honest. And amazing in the fact that, you know, it was a feat to build something like that, but like at what cost, you know? I mean, everything seems to have a cost to it now. And I mean, the same thing happened in America, you know, when the railroad expansion and out west, you know, tons of natives were just ran out of their homes, you know, and killed. And it's not right. And like it said in the video, you can't change the past, but you got to talk about it. You got to remember it. And, you know, it's important to remember the past, and never forget. You can't forget the sacrifice that so many made. All those indigenous people, and over 15,000 Chinese immigrants that came all the way over to Canada to just help build the railroad, got treated like shit. And then what happened? Like, what happened to the ones that didn't die? Were they sent back? Were they allowed to live somewhere in Canada? I guess I don't remember them saying. Somebody let me know if you know. What happened to the remaining like Chinese people who didn't pass away from like disease and stuff? Were they just shipped away after it was done, or were they given a place to live? Is there a Chinese Canadian settlement somewhere in Canada today, like left over from those people that came? I'm very curious to find out. Hopefully there's some kind of a tribute or monument or something built for those people that came over from China to work on the railroad and sacrifice so much, their families, their time, their lives. A lot of them sacrificed their lives to make peanuts, you know. They made nothing for the backbreak work they had to do. And they risked everything for it. So that's crazy. I had no idea. I mean, yeah, it's just crazy. But anyways, guys, let me know what you think about this documentary. Let me know if there's another documentary you guys want me to react to, whether it's something with Canadian history or any other history from any country. We could do some documentary type stuff. I love documentaries. They're very informative. They help me understand better of history, and I don't think we should forget history for many reasons. But I just think it's important to be able to honor the people in the past that laid the foundation, the true heroes, not the rich people that wrote a check and then watched people suffer for their own sake. I could give two shits about those people. I don't like greedy people. I don't like any of that. So anyways, let me know what you guys think. I hope you enjoyed this, and have an amazing new year, by the way. This video should come out sometime around the new year. I hope you all have an amazing, safe, wonderful new year. And thanks for tuning in. Like, comment, subscribe. Hit the hype button if you can. It's on the mobile only. It's a little hype button now that gives me points. I can somehow get points to become part of a leaderboard or something. And supposedly my videos get more views if you're higher up in the leaderboard. I don't know. This is just what I read. I don't know if there's a place to check out where the leaderboard's even at. But I don't know. I love you guys. I'll see you guys in the next one. And thanks for watching.